to be able to teach kids to read and speak using accurate language or grammar. This is very, very slow. If this is not new information for you, please go learn something. Stand up, walk out, and go learn something. Because a lot of this stuff, if you've been teaching CI for a while, might be kind of old hat to you. So we want to read and write and speak using accurate grammar. This is kid talking grammar, so how do you get away from using big grammar words into things that kids can kind of understand so they don't get stuck at pronoun and freak out. And then I am Megan Fandel, and I teach at Van Meter. We have a kindergarten through 12th grade Spanish program in one building, and these are my coworkers, Stacey Wygant and Melissa Newell, and they have about 70% of the background that I have on comprehensible input has come from them, so they are awesome. So kid talk. We want to get away from grammar, talking to kids, and get into meaning. What does it mean when you see parts of words or when you see groups of words? And that is like the big takeaway. I want you to try to shift. If you currently grammar talk to your kids, it would be really great if you could kid talk to them and talk to them about what things mean when you talk to grammar. So 1, why should you do this? 2, it's okay, fine. What is kid talk grammar? And then I'm going to share with you some of the strategies or examples. This might be kind of a short presentation, so we can open it to just kind of a conversation about this. And before I get really too far into this, I just want to say I am a grammar geek. Like, I am the person that read the dictionary on verbs because as a senior in college, I still didn't fully comprehend the past subjunctive. So what did I do? I read the verb charts and I memorized them. And it's like on my summer vacation. This is what I did because I was completely addicted to knowing everything. So please do not, in any capacity whatsoever, be offended by what I say. This is not like I have tried to do the most, suave approach to this, but I have completely changed my thoughts on how to teach grammar. Not if I teach it or not, but how. So that's why we're going to kid talk. So, excuse me. So, how many of you are currently using methods 1, strictly TPRS comprehensible input methods? That's all you do. Knew that. I've worked with all of you guys. Okay, use a mix. How many of you are mixing? Like some of the old stuff I did, some new stuff, and how many of you teach traditional textbook grammar or units and you're taking the step into? Okay, perfect. This is great. So this will be actually some really good conversation once I get done with my spiel. If I get nods from you, like this is your way of telling me, got it, know that, go on, stop wasting my time. If I get hands up, that's a question. Stop me at any time. The other presentation that I did this morning, people did a really good job of that, and I think we got more out of the presentation because people stopped and asked really good questions. Okay, so why is this presentation? There's a lot of critique out there that comprehensible input and TPRS teachers don't teach grammar. Okay, from traditional, more traditional teachers or verb chart, Mary did the verb chart, you have to know this to go to college, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of critique and feedback that we don't do it. We do. We just have a different approach. So that's why I'm doing this, to talk about it is happening. Also, it's really easy, it's a lot easier way for kids to get how language works. If you talk to them in a way that, like, what languages are we teaching here? Spanish?
Spanish.
Everybody, anybody French? Latin? Nothing? You're Latin, okay. Well, actually, you're still learning. Okay, so this is why we want to do this, because we want our kids to get it. You don't want them to look at you and stare. And then also if you speak to them in a natural way, they're going to start naturally acquiring language. It's just going to be very, oh, that sounds right, or that's how it is, and that's how this sentence works. And lastly, it's going to focus on communication. that includes little snippets of grammar rules and explanations versus focusing on grammar and then maybe using it for communication. Because, like I've heard about 4 times today, what do we really want to do with language? People want to know how to talk. They want to know how to pick up a newspaper and read it and understand it. Okay, so why should we be doing this? So you can just stop getting these looks, like in your classroom. Like, I'm done, I'm over, I'm going to rage war on you because I can't do this. But they can. Secondly, I probably don't need to do this, but it's kind of funny to me. I talk. I'll beat the people on the left. You beat the people on the right. I talk.
We talk.
You talk?
You guys talk.
He, she talks. You formal talk.
They talk.
And no one says that, ever. Like, nobody communicates like that, right? So, not that this isn't important to know this organization, and not that we don't ever give it to them, but no one communicates like that, right? We want them to be able to communicate in a way that's more conducive to actual speaking or actual reading and writing. So, what is this? Oh my gosh, I swear that they were not this slow when I made it. Okay, so like I said, it'd be really great if you walked away from today just kind of shifting your thought process, if you haven't already, into how can I talk to my kids in something that makes sense versus, you know, if you traditionally teach grammar. Secondly, it is how to mix grammar into what is considered comprehensible. I'm not going to talk about the verb chart. That doesn't mean you can't use it. You can. Okay? You can use it, and there is a place for it, but I'm not going to talk about that. And overall, we are practicing in context, right? Giving them a meaning for it. Circling. How many of you are familiar with circling? If you are not, that's awesome. If you are not, find out how. Like, it's not going to happen in this presentation, but learn how to do it. It's extremely powerful. I would say especially for the first 2 years. After that, in my experience, they're kind of done. They're kind of over it. But it is very, very powerful, and there are ways to, like Craig was saying in the last presentation, like the same thing, but in different ways. Interviews. So having a student come up to the front and talking to them, like I'm going to talk to you and overemphasize every single time I'm putting an S on the word. Every single time. And then I'll say, hey, why did I put the S on the word when I said tienes? Why did I do that? You, it means you. Good job. Moving on. It's like a 2-second thing. And then you go on. And oh, why would they say tingo? Tingo with an O. What does the O and yo mean? I. Good. Moving on. So this is a really good way to get them to talk about themselves and ask each other questions, which in my past experience wasn't always a strong suit for them to converse with each other. Secondly, modeling questions with visuals. So your visual can mean like this is on the board and you just point to it. Or it can be pictures, any kind of modeling. And you always want to you always want to model accurate grammar, right? And some of us don't have grammar as a strong suit, so that's when you script. You script out your conversation, you stand there and teach from your paper so you make sure that everything is accurate. And if you don't have strong grammar, it's okay. That doesn't mean you're not a good teacher. And that's another thing that comprehensible input is going to do. It's going to enhance your own skills. Like it's going to force you to be a better conversationalist in general, in any language, and it's going to force you to kind of duck and diagram the language a little bit more, which is cool. You can use stories and skits with kind of these pop-up questions, like, okay, actors freeze. And then you can circle. Or you can ask, okay, when I said comiste, what's the iste mean? You did it. What did you do? Eat, comiste. Good. And you can write it or just say it. And then just remember, like, acquiring accurate grammar is a very long process in your first language, let alone in a second or a third, especially if your students, like let's say you have high school students, and they're not speaking in correct grammar at home in their own language. They come to school and say, I don't got a pencil, or I ain't got a pencil. You know, like that is just even more, like it's a very long process. And so we have to be very consistent and correct with input that means something to them, that they can understand. I feel like I'm repeating a lot of what the day has already said, but okay, good, thanks. And then lastly, grammar, grammar is not always comprehensible. Like, do you guys remember from Jay Leno when he used to jaywalking? And he'd go out on the street and interview people, like these horribly blatant questions, like, what is the capital of Alabama? And they're like, New York? No idea whatsoever. That's how most people are with grammar, actually. Like, name an adjective. A what? Like, educated people sometimes blank out when you start grammar talking them, and so even in your first language, sometimes those are things that you can't, it's hard to conceptualize. And so if you stop using the grammar words, it's easier for them. Can you give me a describing word? How did you run or walk? Heads up, this is a board slide if you haven't already been bored. They're unavoidable and predictable grammar errors that children and students are going to make when they learn a language. Think about like children. They're just going to make those mistakes over and over and over. And mostly they're proof of learning. They're evolving language. So when they keep making the mistakes over and over, or if they say like comiste, right, you ate, they say comaste, because they heard an aste, right? That's proof that they're learning a technique, or they've learned the math, so to say, of how to put it together, but you know, they haven't had enough good input or enough experience yet to know that. Secondly, when they're ready, they will start self-correcting. And this is the biggest thing that I've noticed shifting, probably in the past like 5 years actually, shifting my thought process from a traditional method to all comprehensible input, is that even I did this when I was taught by a very traditional Spanish teacher, very good, but very traditional. I would go through a conjugation list in my head. You know, I would stop, and then I would keep going, and it was stunting my fluency. When the truth is that you can speak incorrectly and be understood quite well. You know, and I would even look, I mean, I remember being a graduate student and looking at some of my friends in Spain and saying like, you know, si pudiera, si podría, and I'm like, what are you trying to ask me? Like, they didn't even understand the process that was going in my head. And so innately, by just letting them say it wrong, like eventually they're gonna get it, and you shouldn't force or reprimand like correction. Like by producing, by listening, eventually it will make sense. So it looks a lot like this. I want's toy. Mama gives blankie. It's like a stage. So like your dad says, oh, say hi to Meg, and kid is like, hi to Meg. You know, like those are just little stages that they'll get through. And then, whoops, this is kind of, there's my anti-grammar caveat. This is kind of, I know this is pretty controversial, I think, and I hesitate even to say this, but a lot of people think that teaching grammar explicitly is not teaching language. It's teaching about language. And there is a place for both of them, and I'm not going to tell you what place that is in your classroom or for your curriculum, because everybody has an individual, like your situation is what it is, and you're gonna know how to handle that better than me sitting up here. But teaching about language is what I did for like 5 or 6 years, including in university. And I had a wonderful program in university. But then I realized I got to Puerto Rico, and I couldn't say anything. It was so hard. I'm like, I've been studying this for 6 years. Why is it so hard to say these words I've known forever? Because I was being taught about language for so long. Like I knew all about it, but really not yet how to communicate. So yeah, I'm not anti-grammar, but I do believe it shouldn't stunt their growth. Like forcing correct grammar just stops their production because they think it's got to be right all the time. And then just a little word about correcting their papers. Actually, I learned this from Melissa. She's like, don't correct their papers. And I'm like, what? Like, that made no sense. Like, stop correcting their papers. And I know Stacy had a similar experience. You know, instead of correcting their writing, like fixing the mistakes for them or writing comments or something, like pick some things out as a group that they're doing and then have them find it on their own. Can you find that mistake? And some of them aren't going to be able to find the mistake, and it's the first 3 words on their page. And some of them are going to correct it and never make the same mistake again. But you have to stop fixing or correcting for them so that they can do that. Do either of you two want to add to that? Or let's take a pause from me talking and let's just
I switched 6 years ago to comprehensive input, TPRS, and when I would hand back their papers that had my writing all over it, I mean, it was meticulous, and this is how you do everything, it was all very well corrected. I would hand it back, they'd look at their grade and put it away, and honestly, I shouldn't admit this, but that's what I did in college too. I got my paper back, looked at my grade and put it away, and I didn't really internalize the errors that I made, because I kept making those same errors. And so instead of correcting every little thing, as a group, pick 2 or 3 things and I have them do it in groups, help each other if they're comfortable. They usually are comfortable with somebody in the group. And after you've built a relationship with them and they feel comfortable in your classroom, they don't critique in a negative way. So I found that for me works the best. And then, remember what our correction was last week? Meg keeps journals. The kids all write their same writing in their journals so they can, before they do a quick write or whatever they're writing, flip back the page before, see what we talked about last week or whatever it was, turn the page, think about that as you're writing, and if they make the same mistake again, they make the same mistake again, but chances are a lot of them won't. And then have them do another one and go through the same process again.
Angie, do you correct grammar? Because I know you do a lot of storytelling and story writing and stuff.
I do, but I want to get away from it, and so that's helpful to know how to, because I want to do journals too, but I don't have time to look through them all.
You don't have to.
So that's my question.
Yeah, don't grade it, just.
What do you do with them?
Take a few, I take like the top
section
5.
So you just take like a certain
Take the
few
top five.
Period
and
1 I
comment.
read this week.
Because I feel bad if I don't
But
comment
keep
on
track of the ones that
So
you
throw a
did,
stamp in there.
put them at the bottom, so you don't do the same ones the next week, or
Can
make
you
some sort of
stamp
little
that you
note.
just looked at it?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Or even scan, really, I did not believe it until it started happening this last, with the journals, and we do quick writes and then we do planned, calm, planned writes, pay attention to everything and read, we try to make it sound good or look good. And then we do quick writes that are just strictly for fluency. Try to write something that makes sense, try to get out as many words as you can. And my students are writing anywhere between, 10 words in 5 minutes to 150. And really, if I stack this out and I just look, I'll circle a good structure, put it away. Circle, smiley face, put it down. And all I'm really looking is that there's a couple structures, and just look for the structure of the week.
That's what I
If you
look
want,
for,
yin
but
and
I
K.
still grade all the other stuff, and I'm like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so
It does
time
get really-
consuming.
So
So
stop.
that's why,
Just
thank
stop.
you, that's yeah,
Just
I
stop
was-
right
liberating.
When I first started and Melissa hadn't told me about it and I had jury duty, so I was sitting at the courthouse waiting for my number to be called, and I just started this new method, didn't know what to have the kids be doing. And I had these papers that I was correcting, I'm like, fine, I'm gonna use this time to correct papers. I went through every single paper and I marked the things that I normally would mark, and I bring it back and I'm like, look how well they did, and she's like, oh, you worked on all of these? And I'm like, well, of course. She's like, do not show these to them. I'm like, why not? And she's like, because they cannot see it, it will take them backwards.
It'll shut them down.
And she goes, it'll shut it down. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so I spent all that time, but what it did for me was, it was a reflective moment. I almost needed to do that, to go through that process, because it taught me how to pull out what I'm looking for when I read their work
Right.
without criticizing. You can write comments on the side of positives.
Right.
I love how you did this
Yeah.
and underline a good area that you see and don't pull out anything else. And then when you put their grade in the grade book, have your notes section, have something where you keep notes of what things you're looking for to see them improve on. And then if they, you're not gonna tell them grammar to improve on, but then, she talks
But
about.
hey, don't forget that anytime you have 2 subjects or you wanna say they, you need an N.
Yeah,
You know,
I think
don't
about
forget that.
my 5-year-old,
3
he
years.
talks
And they're
about
still making
zombies,
mistakes.
and he says the zombies, and I think it's so stinking cute that first I tried correcting it, and then I couldn't correct it, I just continued to call them the zombies, and he turned to me the other day, he'd been doing this for months, and he turned to me and he'd argued with me about it, and I'm like, okay, he'll get it, and when you talked about kids just getting it, he turned to me the other day and he pulls up his little glasses, and he goes, he kinda looks like little kid off Stuart Little when he's in those glasses, he goes, Mommy, it's zombies, not the zombies. You and I have been saying it wrong.
Yeah.
I go,
No.
oh, how'd you know it was zombies? We've already had this conversation, but he didn't wanna listen to me, and he goes, his brother told him. And so now, whenever, every once in a while, I'll hear myself kinda go, oh, are the zombies happy? It is zombies.
Yeah.
And so, he corrected himself just through hearing it correctly,
Yeah.
instead of forcing it. Now,
And
I wish I would have bottled up the Bazami talk now though, cause it's so cute.
It is so
inside.
To kind of like piggyback on that though, there is actual research that shows that students respond better to peer voices than adult voices. And so in the groups, right, if you can group them up and say, okay, everybody, we're looking for these 3 things. Did you put an N on the end of the words? Did you put an aste if you did it? If they're hearing their peer voices, it's from less of a, I'm over you. And there is real research to back that up. Don't know what it is.
Right, and so what you guys have talked about, that for us, the big push is putting the ownership of the learning on the students instead of us like teaching.
Yes.
It's like, they are the ones who are supposed to like help themselves, or whatever. That's perfect.
Right.
That is, that's perfect, right,
Yeah.
what you guys just said.
Yep.
I wanna go backwards a little bit. You used a phrase a minute ago where you said the structure of the week, and Craig Klein talked a lot about the he gave out a number. He said they only know 18 structures and they are producing this. Okay, so for someone who's making a transition or considering making a transition, how did you decide what structures to teach when? And how do you know what the structure, I mean, yes, we know what the structures are, T, N, and K, okay,
Right.
so that's considered a structure. So they're functional chunks of language, basically.
Exactly.
And so, but how do you know? Did you base that on what you know from teaching out of a textbook? I mean,
No, I didn't. Anybody that wants to talk about this can. I followed the Super 7. Like, I did there's 7 of the most common words, and then there's another set of like 8 to 10 that follow. And they're just, statistically, the most useful words you can use.
And if you think about, you come home from work, oh my gosh, today at work, there was a guy who told me that he saw, and you think of those
And I
things
was
that you,
feeling,
right,
Yeah.
so there was is huge, that's probably
yeah.
the biggest one. But there is a definite list, and ones
is
if
it
you.
published somewhere or is it
Yeah,
like
well, I was just
everywhere?
gonna say,
Google
a
it,
lot of
Super
people,
7 in
that,
Spanish.
and if you are really considering making a transition, people call it the Green Bible, but it's the Green Book that's called TPRS, Teaching Proficiency Through Storytelling. That's a really good one. You can flip through it. It's maybe overwhelming to read through the whole thing, but a Google search is quick. You can find those, but then if you wanna get more into it, oh, there it is, right there.
Nice.
And it models circling, it models, like, if you're like, am I doing this right? It's a good refresher for me. I mean, I've been doing it, and then I go back through and I'm like, oh, I'm missing a step in circling. I wonder if I were to remember to add this one little step in,
Yeah.
because I was sitting there with a book. I mean, so
But it
sometimes it's a
was,
refresher.
Like, Stacey and I probably both had a similar experience with this. We were very upfront with our students. You know what? I'm gonna try this new method. We're all gonna try it together. We might fall. It might be terrible. We're just gonna try it. We're
When
gonna
you ask your
change it
kids
and
what
look
they
it up
want in
further and
Spanish, they
further.
want to be able to speak
They
it.
wanna be able
Go
to speak
ahead.
it, right?
Sorry, what is your name? So I don't just,
I'm Cammy.
Kim, okay.
Where did you guys get trained? I have taught in different places, but I moved to California 6 years ago, and I moved to a school that was using TPRS. And when I was trained in TPRS several years ago, probably 18 to something years ago, it was very different, so I had kind of a bad taste in my mouth when they said it, and I remember thinking, okay, I'm gonna go pretend to be on board, and then I'm gonna change their minds, and we're gonna go back to the textbook. But after I got there and I saw what their kids could do after 4 years, and I observed a French class, their French was better than mine. Now granted, some of them had studied abroad too, but I was really intimidated, because I'd been teaching present tense, Spanish 1, for, 18 years or however long I've been teaching. And so they kind of pulled me in, showed me a few things. I didn't really have a very good mentor at the time, but I struggled through it. It was a really difficult transition. The main thing is to have a really strong mentor that can kind of help you through it. I went to a training with Scott Benedict 3 years ago after having done it for 3 years and figured out what I needed to improve on. And then I'm still learning. So this year I finally feel like after 6 years that I'm like, yeah, I'm getting pretty good. I'm feeling pretty confident. But these guys, after, they did, I think, in 1 year, what took me probably 4 years to do, because I didn't really have a mentor.
Yeah, and also
But-
the resources are very good
Yes,
right now.
oh my gosh.
There are
And a lot more.
Go
There is a lot
observe
more there.
people who are teaching with comprehensive
observe it.
input.
You'll
That is
find
the
out.
best way to do it.
And I discovered, because when I first introduced her, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this, kind of just little parts of it, she's like, no, really, you have to do the whole thing. Okay, and so I just chose one class to dip my toes in, and then I realized I was doing a disservice. Janelle Michael from Earlham came to come observe for her PLC thing, and I'm like, oh, I guess I got this new curriculum I'm doing, and we were halfway through the semester, and she observed my Spanish 2s that I just switched like 2 months prior, and she's like, oh my god, and they were doing a speaking test, I'm sorry, it's like a bad day that you came, but she's like, no, I'm getting so much out of this. She's like, your Spanish 2 kids that just started, they weren't even doing it a whole year, speak better than my Spanish 4s, naturally. And she's like, and this is from this method, and so she converted. Like, she took the plunge. And I taught it for a whole year. Megan joined us, and we did take a training through Blaine Ray. We did sign up for one that was a 2-day thing, and it was beneficial.
in Des Moines.
It was one in
Yeah.
Des Moines. It was a conference.
February
We did it in the summer.
Yeah.
It was beneficial. I wouldn't have traded it in because it reinforced things. But we were both kind of like, okay, we're past this part. We get this.
Yeah.
We want the next level
The
now.
next- Which we're still kind of looking for that, like,
But it was beneficial. It was a really good starting point.
and especially for circling. If
Uh-huh.
you don't know how to circle, go to a Blaine Ray, because circling is very powerful, and you can circle.
And he puts it in a different
vocab,
language,
grammar,
one you do not know,
culture.
so it shows you how quick you can learn.
Yeah.
I was so proud of myself. I did 90 words in 5 minutes after 2 hours of German. So, you know,
And Sie hast eine Katze. I still remember. Join this group, teaching CI in the Heartland, like, go to there, be in this group. Stacy started it, I think, like 5 people could add you, like,
Yeah.
if you request access,
Yeah, there's
somebody's
like a-
gonna quickly be on to add you. So let's get back to our Rumble
Did
here.
anybody else has anybody else gone to the, last year, it's in Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's the,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm going this year.
are you to Chattanooga? I went last year to the cities, and it's a 4-day. And I wanna say it was like $400 and some, which is actually 4 days. That's not very expensive. And you could sign up as a beginner or an experienced. And the beginners get to do kinda like what Blaine Ray, I think they learned Russian. I went as an experienced, you get to watch Grant teach actual people, or other languages, and I felt it was very, very beneficial, cause he teaches, then you debrief. So you get to ask every single question you ever
well,
want,
and also
so.
join the Facebook group, IFLT, here, I'll tell you what it is.
Yeah, that one
IFLT,
too, right.
NTPRSCI, it's got over 2,300 members.
And
with big
a lot
people,
of
we're
the big
taking back
names are on
Sunday.
there.
So the
But
more you
it's
can
a
network
lot,
to ask
if
your
you are
questions.
just starting and you can't handle the rush, like flood of information, maybe hold off until like semester, because it's a lot. Like, I went in and turned off notifications and just go back every once in a while. Okay, so let's go back here. So here's some of the strategies. One of them is typically called pop-up. I like to call it like snippet grammar. So what they are, 2 to 5 second comments, it might be 10-second comments, about semantics, syntax, orthography, and like all these other big words that we really love to talk about, but nobody else gets, because we're grammar geeks and nobody else, like, talk about a conversation killer, like, it just, people shut off because they don't know what you're talking about. So instead of talking about orthography, or syntax, you're like, hey, remember, like, we say house big and not big house, right? Remember that? Good. Moving on. Also, this is really small, sorry. You need to include this as a part of every lesson. So I think this is really nice for those people that are tied to a curriculum. You work in a department where you teach Spanish 1 and 2, but by the time they get to 3 and 4, they have to know what was in the curriculum, right? This, including grammar snippets on every part, if they have to know present and past tense by the time they get to Spanish 2, you can do that. And you can do it through little reminders every single day and focus just on, first person singular or just the singular people on the verb chart for 2 weeks. And then, before when I thought, oh my gosh, I have to teach all the present and all the past tense by year 1. Now I'm like,
That's all we do
so
anyway.
easy. Like, that's all we do, and we teach it in conjunction with each other. The question, what does that mean, needs to become a part of your routine, right? So you're talking about, you read a book, and you read a chapter out of a book, and you want to talk about it in the past tense, right? So you say, ¿Qué ocurrió? Why do you hear oh so hard on the end? What does that mean, oh, on the end? What does it mean? It happened, good. So just switching from, is there an O with a U accent? What's it mean? So here's some examples. And these are ones that we use all the time.
And we do hand movements with it, so if I'm really being specific, ¿Qué ocurrió? Why did I say ocurrió? And so when I ask that, I do, to show that it was in the past, and I do the same thing when I say, ¿Qué día es hoy? ¿Qué día fue ayer? So they know that that's yesterday.
Yeah, going to. It's going to happen.
Or I'll go like this.
So then they know that O with an accent means it's over. It happened and it's over. Another good one, ia aba, just means used to. Anytime you see ia aba, it means it used to happen or it was happening. You can stop me if I'm going too slow, or again, just nod if you're like, oh my god, done. A and E means he or she. At the end of a word, A and E, he and she. O means yo. Add an S means you. Add an aste means you did something. Habría blank means she would have. Habría what? And you can let them say habría come. Habría lee. Right? Let them say that and then repeat it correctly. Oh, habrías leído.
Something we should probably include too is all of us have the same posters in our rooms that we made. They're not anything fancy. They are regular.
Times New Roman 100.
Yeah, and then it's colored pieces of paper and it says había, there was, there is, and we point to them all the time.
And you wouldn't put this up on the wall all at the same
This.
time, all of
No.
this, because that would be too overwhelming. This is in your language that you use with the kids.
Can I ask though, because this is just for my, going back, because obviously you're gonna tell where I'm coming from. Why do you not refer to usted? Because it's very offensive with some Spanish speakers that you don't use usted.
I do. We do talk about it. For example, one of our phrases of the week was igualmente. Igualmente means y tú or y usted. And we talked about the difference.
And we have a K-12 program, so all of my elementary kids, K through 5, I walk into the class and I say, buenos dias, and they say, buenos dias, and I say, muy bien, muy bien, no. I say muy bien, and I just lost it. But then they say, y usted, and they know to use usted with me, so they get it, but,
But we don't
It's
go
like when
into a
you
big
have-
depth, write a chart of everybody would say tú, and then a chart of everybody would say usted, tú. We just give them
And
little
But when you
examples
use
of
your
our-
E and your A example,
Oh.
you always just strictly are referring to
We usually
he,
say he or she,
but
no, because usually you have usted when you use it. You don't, usually if you're going to use the form, they
It's a
hear
quote.
usted somewhere in that phrase, and they know when they hear usted, it's you, sir, or ma'am. And so,
You could add that.
you can easily.
you can
put it.
easily add
Right,
it.
or you mean he or she, or you. Politely, you sir. Yeah, you could definitely add that. Mente means a why. And then also another really big takeaway, and I hope this is an aha moment for somebody in here, because this was whoa, for me. Make combos for kids, right? Instead of explicitly saying le da, because this is an indirect adjective pronoun, just give them le da for a year. Or le dice va a, pienso que es, te voy a explicar, te voy a comer, te voy a tirar al suelo. Give them those examples in set. Instead of separate word, give them fluency right off the bat. Give them a whole phrase. And then later, after they know it, it's a lot easier to talk about, okay, where did that go to? Who did they give it to? That means it's indirect, right? And still you might get crickets, but okay, so good. And it's a really good way to teach boring words, and, therefore, however, stick them with a phrase that's exciting. However, like, give them a phrase of the week and do the same thing for a week, and then we piggyback. We'll do phrase of the week 1, phrase of the week 2 is 1 and 2. And then you drop 1, and then do 2 and 3, and then 3 and 4. And so they're getting it for a while. So like, pásame mi cuaderno, porfa. Porfa is fun to say. And then you can just remind them, like, it's really por favor, but nobody ever taught you por favor is for a favor. Everybody says please, because that's what it means. Then there's the usted y tú to your teacher, so like after they know how to say, oh, ¿cómo está, cómo estás, then you can have them tack it on. Use music. I would say all of my students, like if you said, hey, say something in the future tense, they'd be like, what? But if I say, ¿qué vas a hacer? And go, da 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 da, they're like, oh yeah, voy a, and they can fill in the blank. They can do it because this song, if you've not taught this song before, I very strongly recommend it. Awesome. Plus, everybody needs to know who Mark Anthony is. And then here's another example, like of something that you just innately learn, like Spanish soccer. Like really big. When I was studying in Spain, it was 2008 to 2012. So like big soccer years, glory days. And I hear my friend just stand up and scream, Venga! Right? And I'm like, nobody had ever explained this. It's very, very Castilian vocab. Dirty mouths, right? Like nasty language. Combined with very understandable, applicable situation. So if, not necessarily with naughty words, but if you can make those interjections very obvious and applicable, they're going to get it innately. And then they'll start applying things. So I wouldn't tell anyone to go but, you know, like, those are fun things that I know that no one ever explained the grammar to me. So here's a couple other things you can do to get grammar in. And this is from Allison Weinhold, who presented earlier. You know, talk about the last chapter. You don't have to require them to speak in the past tense, but you repeat, you parrot back, correct. Talk about, you know, write a prediction, what's going to happen. And they don't even have, if they know va-a, they don't even have to know how to use a future. Like, you know, they can just va-a come, va-a corre. And then afterwards say, okay, everybody, after va-a and whatever you did, stick a little R on the end. It just means to, right? To do it, to run, to. Circling what is happening. And this kind of goes along with the shift, like try to think useful. What is the most useful, what's very common, versus the grammar points that they need to know. Like, you know that in the back of your head, that's what's guiding you through the tenses you need to teach, but they don't need to know that. And then just like, you know, give tips. Give them very general tips. Why is this so cool? 1, students, like, this is the way students are focused on meaning rather than grammar rules themselves. If you have to teach the grammar rules, you know, I say, you don't have to do this, but I say teach them after they already know how to usefully use them. It's good. You're gonna get, oh, versus 20 hands in the air. Wait, go back a slide, go back, I didn't write that down, I didn't get all those notes. So it's just gonna be like, oh, makes sense. And then next, it's really like built-in scaffolding and differentiation, and we have a unique situation because kindergarten through 8th grade is compulsory. They have to take Spanish every day. And then once they get to high school, it's an elective. But we have this flexibility to, when they get it, they get it. And if they don't, I just tell they're going to Stacy next year, they don't get it yet. And she just keeps going. So we have that. And just because they don't get it yet doesn't mean they have to repeat an entire year of language, right? They can still stay afloat without getting everything. So it's kind of built in. Comfort level for you and the students. And
I'm gonna interject one thing too, when she talks about like grammar with interjecting little pieces without going into huge detail. Senora, how do you say buys her? What's the her? Because I'll go, what's buys? We know buys, and I'm like, compra, but what's her? Like, how do you say that? And I'll go, well, how did you say gives her?
oh,
And they'll go, le da. I go, so what's her? Lay. Oh! And it's like this huge light bulb moment, and I didn't teach them anything. All I did was ask them a question off of what they've used. They just know it's gives him or her, gives him or her,
Yeah.
gives him or her. And suddenly they know how to say buys her.
and you don't have to go through 2 days of, okay, let's do the lesson again. But these are all my resources, by the way, all the people that taught me. wherever you guys wanna take this, I think we have 10 minutes.
Last year.
Or I think there's a session next door, like a round table next door, so if you wanna go bombard them.
Oh, yeah,
No,
we could
I
bombard
don't know
them.
what we wanna do.
I can ask you a question. What happens when, I mean, you guys work together, so you know, and you can say, they don't get it yet.
Yeah.
And she knows that coming in, and you can sort of, piggyback on each other and take over where one left off. But what happens when your kids go to other districts? Are they
We
good?
don't know what happens when they go
Yeah.
away,
Well,
but when they
yes.
come in, we know what
Oh,
happens.
yeah, I'm gonna
So
assume,
with-
yeah, I can
with,
guess that, but.
Students who have taken like Spanish 2 with us, for example, or even Spanish 1, are they can output. They can, say quite a bit. They don't know grammar. When they
They
go
don't
to
know
another
grammar
school, it's
words.
very difficult for them to be placed. They usually put them back. And, well, they either put them in Spanish 2 or 1, because they don't know the rules. That's hard. When they come to us, we usually, if they've had Spanish 1, we usually say, well, let's get you back in there again so that they get the basis. If they excel and they pick it up quickly, we can bump them up to a different class, but it's tricky. It is tricky.
So both ways, maybe they're going back.
Yeah. It could be.
Just because of the difference in the
Right,
teaching
right,
strategy.
but once,
and
you
the
might
learning.
have somebody that catches it really quickly and then they move.
But
What
always
we,
move
what
up,
we're
like start
designing,
lower.
yeah, what we're
Right.
designing is, our goal this year is to report our classes, so that if somebody does come in new, and I'm teaching Spanish 1, then they can watch a bunch of the classes from Spanish 1 until they feel comfortable, and then hopefully get into Spanish 2 okay, because they do have the grammar background, so they'll be stronger with grammar. We have a student from Waukee who took, I think, 1 and 2, and then came to us, and then he had 3 this past year. No, he might have come in just after 1, we won't say the name. But anyway, he's very fluent now, and he also, you can see he's conjugating verbs in his head. He stops himself and says, "Señora, is that correct? Wait, did I say that correctly? Is this correct?" And he stops himself, whereas my other students, they just speak, and they make a lot of mistakes, but they're slowly correcting them through the years of practice.
And you're also gonna
Yeah.
get, your smart kids that are gonna wanna start correcting each other.
Oh.
And so a rule in my class is, if you hear it, I want you to notice in your head, not through your mouth. And if you want me to know, right, cause there are those kids, they want you to know that they're smarter than everybody else. If you want me to know, I just want you to raise your hand and mouth it. But you are not to stop them, you are not to correct them, like in no way do you stop their thought process. Cause it makes it so nobody wants to talk, and that's not fun, or try, you know, so that's a rule.
You were giving examples that were for Spanish 1 or Spanish 2. What about those kids that are lower and maybe will come in at 3rd grade?
Okay,
or-
so yeah, that's more elementary, so, I don't know if you wanna have a smaller conversation, or I can just answer that question.
How many do you have in elementary program? One,
okay.
two?
I just taught last year, but I won't next
Okay.
year.
Well, I can address it because it might
I
apply.
think it's valuable, yeah. because-
What I do is, because we do have kids that are, now this will be their 3rd year, and each year we get new incoming students. So what I do is I start with new stories every year, and then they're basic, but I add new vocab so that my students that I've had are acquiring new vocab, but I still use those basic 7 in every story that I create, so that it's not overwhelming. So it's like starting all over again with new words. Now, one thing that I haven't addressed is past tense, and I've just started doing that within the stories. So that, because I only see them, and this answers your question, 4 days a week, 15 minutes every day, which their production is amazing, because I go over and over and over and over what I do. After 2 weeks, they're telling the stories. Most of them can tell some of it, some of them can tell all of it, and a few of them can't really do anything yet, which is normal.
So same stories at every grade level.
As I introduce it, yes.
Okay.
So,
So the
yeah.
1st graders are getting the same story that the 4th graders are, but it's different, it's adapted to their.
Well, no, I mean, my kindergarten has a new curriculum, my first grade has a
Oh,
new
you,
curriculum.
okay, so you have a different curriculum.
Second, third, fourth, and fifth are kind of the same, I do
Okay.
differentiate, but it's because we just introduced the program 2 years ago.
So each year we're kind of like adding a new,
Gotcha.
to make our life easier, you
Right,
teach the
right.
same.
But then those days
I
will
mean,
quickly be gone.
Right, yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
We got it.
I use Profe Klein, Spanish cuentos. I use Simon Cat videos, which I've created a lot of stories to go along with those. And then I take songs like Los Pollitos and I write stories to go with the songs, different stories that lead up to the song. And so my product is the culture, but the stories leading up to it are usually silly or whatever, so they're engaging.
Do you have one I can show almost on here?
A student telling, well.
No, just
like-
an example of a story and a
If you
video.
go to my webpage, I can't see.
Profe Newell.
Yeah, are you in there? Go
Yes.
to first through fifth grade down, see it? Yeah, put it on there.
I just
De colores.
go to
No,
her after
that's
a
not
year and a half of CI.
I would say,
She was an A
That's those
student,
ones you
she was
should
strong. She had hesitation and things, but it was more, in production, in writing, she could really produce. And she went to a neighborhood district and, that, I told her, I said, tell your teacher to email me if she wants to get some feedback. And the teacher did email me and I explained the method of teaching we use, and then I knew it was different and I tried to prepare her. I go, but she's gonna struggle in some areas, but let me show you what her writing looks like. And I go, if you wanna see what she can write, set a timer and have her tell you a story in 5 minutes. And I finally took pictures of her work so the teacher could read it. She's like, oh, wow. But she couldn't get her to produce, well, she wasn't to that level of production.
Yeah.
And then she didn't understand how to set the questions up with like, you have to have it
all
set up to
different.
just,
It's
not like just
yeah.
speak
Yeah.
Spanish.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you want me to say? Here's a picture,
Oh my
tell me a
gosh.
story with the picture, she could do that. Ask me questions the way that we ask in class, that
Right.
are normal
I
questions.
took some of my most wonderful, excited students to the school board one day and forgot that they would want us to show off. Like, I just went straight around, kind of spacey, but, and then they're like, well, say something for us. And the kids are like,
What do you want me to say?
yeah, exactly, what do you want me to say? And they're like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, tell me about your pets, Vino. His name is Vincent, and everybody calls him Vino. We did not name him Vino because it means wine. Like, that was just an example. So, tell me about your pets. And so he talked about it, and hey, can you tell the story from last week? Yeah, da da da. And like, they were completely caught off guard and very intimidated by that situation, but they still kind of pulled through with some stuff, and the school board was like, okay. Okay.
It
So they can't, and I regret not saying, we can't, like, until you fill the sponge, you can't squeeze it out. Like, you have to put a lot of water in the sponge before stuff is gonna come out, and even then, you can't squeeze all the water out of the sponge. This is not coming out, like, it's still gonna be damp, there's still gonna be stuff stuck in here that's not gonna come out. And a lot of people don't get that.
Well, and in this case, I talked to the mom, because I still talk to her, and she said that it took about a year, so she left at like second semester, and then the first semester she was there, and then by then she was getting it, but she missed the old way because she's like, I'm sitting there memorizing sheets. She's like, I'm memorizing for a worksheet, and that is the only thing I'm doing. I'm memorizing for a worksheet. I'm not producing. I'm not fluently producing. And that was her comparison. She's like, I like the teacher, and I wasn't trying to convert the teacher to our way at all. I just wanted to show the teacher what she could produce, because that's hard to try and place a student. You're like, do they not know any Spanish?
Right, well,
You know
yeah.
how to conjugate?
And when they
I
come to
remember-
us, we say, like, our assessment, or our placement assessment is, write us a story. Here's some ideas on these posters, write everything you can. And you get the kids that make a list of sentences, or the same sentence with different verb conjugations, and there's nothing, that's the best they can do, because that's what they've been taught, nothing wrong with it. But, so we start them over. We put them in one. So, sorry,
Okay.
I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, we are out of time, but I can just show that if anybody needs to walk out, and I actually do too, but I'll just show you this quickly, and I won't be offended if you leave. So what I do is I take a
The
song,
next one starts at 3:30, you're okay.
well, I'm helping,
Oh,
so. So what I do is I write a story, here's the story, I'm not gonna leave it up there, but, I write a story, and it's about a, toad who has stinky feet, and his friend tells him, wash your feet, they stink, or something like that, and so it's lávate los pies. huelen mal, qué apestoso. And we tell this story for 2 weeks, and then we get to the song with all that repetition.
It's just
Here,
scroll up.
Oh, okay. And then they can listen to the song, and the song lyrics are here, and it's just, the toad doesn't wash his feet. He doesn't wash his feet because he doesn't want to. He lives in the lagoon, he doesn't wash his feet because he doesn't want to, how stupid. So, that's the song, they love it because it practices the vowels. It says, alzaba, no salaba, no salaba, paca, na cara, elementary, totally elementary. But they love it, even my 5th graders like that one, especially when it says ooh, because it says poo.
Yeah.
I giggle too, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so, and there's a lot on my website. So
Thank you for coming in, I hope it was
Okay,
useful, if it wasn't.
Well done, no, well done.